let's take a tour of the Fractal Design Core 3300. Now the Core series is their baseline series. It's sort of like the entry series. You keep the the Scandinavian aesthetic and a lot of the design philosophies of Fractal, where you have like a lot of open space to do pretty much whatever you want and a lot of options. And it's also they really do a good job at utilizing the space that's given to them. So with this one, they've given you a low price point to get started in Fractal stuff, I guess. So that's a easy way to describe it. So we're looking at the 3300, but we're also going to take a brief look at the 3500, but they're almost the same case. So I'm going to focus on the 3300, and then we'll mention the extras that you get by stepping up to the 3500. So as you can see, it's a pretty wide case, and it's a mid tower. It'll fit ATX, but it'll also fit EATX as long as they're up to 295 millimeters wide or smaller. Micro ATX and of course mini ATX will all fit in here. And if you look at the front, you can see we have the standard sleek aesthetic, sort of almost a brushed aluminum look on the front panel, and then we have two 5¼ inch bays, and right on the top we have the two USB 3.0, the power button, and also the audio ports right there. And then if you move on back, right on the top we have two 140 or 120 millimeter fan spots. And with the 3500, there's a fan included up there. With the 3300, the only fans we have included are one 140 and one in the front and one 140 in the back. And both of these fans of the Silent Series are two fans. Now the front, it doesn't have like a door that comes off or anything like that. It's not that fancy. It's just there. And there are some vents on the side to let the air come in. Because just beneath that, I mean, you can pop the entire thing off, like the entire front panel. You can pop that off, and beneath that, there's spots where you can mount two more 120s or two more 140 millimeter fans. You can pretty much mount radiators there or on the top. You can mount a 120 or a 140 radiator in the back. There's just a lot of spots that you can mount a lot of different things. All right, now when you first take off the side panel, you'll notice that there is not the standard hard drive cage like we have with a lot of Fractal cases. What you have is like a vertical hard drive bracket, and this can mount three 3.5 inch drives and two 2.5 inch drives on the back, and you can mount them all simultaneously. So you have a bunch of drives in there, and then you'll still have room for fans and water cooling and that sort of thing. Behind that is a spot that's a little bit raised, and there's also some padding on the back, and that's where you're going to mount your power supply. And there's ventilation on the bottom with a filter beneath that for dust. So you'll have room to breathe there for the power supply. Now also inside we have 7 expansion slots and plenty of room for your motherboard, and again it can support large motherboards. There are no rubber grommets in the 3300, but the 3500 does give you rubber grommets around the different routing holes and that sort of thing. But there are plenty of holes to route cables, and the rubber grommets really just mainly help with the aesthetics. They don't exactly help with heat or anything like that. If you flip it around to the other side, you'll notice that there is plenty of room behind the motherboard tray for cable management. I mean, a lot of room, almost an inch of space back there. And another thing I really like about that is there's nothing blocking the way, where the motherboard tray ends, there's nothing blocking that. Sometimes some of the cases will block the bottom area there. It's just kind of strange. Plenty of spaces for cable tie downs, and something else you'll notice, there's spots on the back of the motherboard tray where you can mount two additional 2.5 inch drives like SSDs or whatever you want to mount back there. Let's talk about what this thing can support. So graphics cards, it can support huge graphics cards at up to 430 millimeters, but if you're using one or more 3.5 inch hard drives, the power connectors for anything larger than like a 255 millimeter graphics card may bump into those. So depending on where your power connectors are, but the longer graphics cards might get in the way. You'll have to move around your hard drives or just use fewer drives. There are 7 fan positions again, and there's 2 the Silent Series R2 fans included. As far as the CPU cooler goes, you can use a tower cooler at up to 185 millimeters, and the PSUs can be 170 millimeters deep. All right, the case dimensions on this one are 233 by 451 by 517, and the weight is 7.8 kilograms. All right, let's talk about the differences you get when you step up to the 3500. There's more fans, number one. Number two, you're going to get a hard drive bracket instead of the vertical bracket. It's a standard hard drive cage, not a vertical bracket. You get that. The 3500 also adds a fan controller that has a few settings as far as running your fans on high or low, and then you can also opt to get a window on the 3500. There's also rubber grommets on the cable routing holes, but other than that, these are very, very similar cases. Now I'll probably be using these cases quite a bit for upcoming builds just because the price point and the value for what you get. I do want to note that the build quality is not quite the same as it is with their more expensive models. I did notice Some of the seams were not perfectly lined up, but in their defense, the one that they shipped me came all the way from Sweden, so it probably got knocked around a little bit. But still, some of the plastic where it was meeting the metal, the rolled steel and that sort of thing, was just looked like it was not entirely perfect. It didn't cause any, structural problems. It didn't make the case shape, it didn't make the case shape weird or anything like that. In fact, most people probably won't even notice it. But I didn't notice that a couple of the seams were not completely flush and perfect and beautiful, So that's a minor gripe. Other than that, it's just their core line. It does exactly what they want it to do, and it keeps their, design mentality and their aesthetic. So if you want a decent case with a lot of options at a good price point, you should probably take a look at one of these.